In the studio today, we have the embargo lift of the TSR woods. So Tom and I are going to be hitting the clubs, looking at the different shot patterns, looking at the kind of swings that they suit. We both got quite different deliveries. So it's a good opportunity to look at what the performance is, what kind of swing styles on first appearance they seem to help, and then a brief comparison to last year's models as well. So we're going to start off with, Tom's going to hit the TSR2. We're both going to hit them. Tom will hit the TSR2 into the TSI2, then I'm going to switch around. But we're going to just talk you through exactly what's going on and what we've been seeing today in the studio. So a couple of shots for Tom first. So there's a bit of background. Tom's naturally a little bit of a squeezer of the ball. So he tends to get a little bit down, a little on top, a little bit across. So not that I'm bigging him up somewhere, but in terms of delivery, generally a little bit more squeeze as an impact position, whereas I'm a little bit more up and releasing, a little more draw bar. So we're going to get a couple of shots with each, get a base bit of data, and then we'll walk you through it.
All right, let's see how this goes. Bit right. Right.
Okay, that was a better hit there. So what was actually quite interesting to see is what happens on centre hit, but also with the each of our kind of general misses. So those couple of shots with Tom there. I mean, based on the design profile, I'll just lift this up to camera so you can see. TSR2 with the weight, heavier weight right at the back of the head there. Deep weighted, very stable. That's actually one of the things that we both noticed hitting today. Very stable off centre, but when you get someone who's got that little bit of a fade bias, first shot, a little bit open, popped up, lots of spin, lots of height. Second shot, a lot more solid, lower launch, good ball speed. But one of the things that isn't a massive surprise is to see spin a little on the higher side, but very good ball speed. So it'd be interesting to switch it over to the previous generation, the TSI2, and get a bit of a comparison, and then I'll step in and hit too. I think one of the things that we've all commented on with this is how good across the face it feels.
Yeah, feels very stable. Almost in reference to probably the most stable driver I've tried. It doesn't feel like it's going to go anywhere. Even on those off-centre hits, like even that second one wasn't completely out of the middle, but it just felt so solid. So really, really good in that respect. Just, for my action, a little bit high spinning, but you'll see as we go through, it's going to hopefully calm that down.
So switching over to TSI2, this is really where, this has been a very, very consistent performing product. From a dispersion point of view, being very good indeed. So what will be interesting to see is how that spin profile changes. A little bit down and over that one. A little bit smothery. So it's a similar kind of thing to TSR. So if you get it a little bit underneath it, a little open for Tom in particular, a little squeezed, up it pops. But what we have seen is with that a little bit of a drop off. I'm just going to squeeze back to the other data. Actually very similar indeed, for both of those. So for Tom, what we can see is that spin and launch slightly higher with this on one that you miss a little bit, but very, very similar, but not necessarily. I mean, this isn't the head that we would naturally pick for you because of your impact position. So TSI2, TSR2, a bit of a feel of stability for Tom. Actually, it's not a massive jump forward, but with more weight at the back, if you tend to get down across it, that weight's cutting across. So not something we'd naturally see as being particularly suited.
No, definitely you can feel that slight change in spin across the face, and even probably a little bit more from the TSI2 compared to the new TSR. Just didn't quite feel the same balance.
That's all good. And in essence, what's happened is they've managed to save weight, as every driver is doing now. They're saving weight throughout the main body of the club, putting weight further back, trying to get a little bit more stability off centre, reduce the twisting, reduce the energy loss. So thank you. So that's really where, again, if you do have a slightly kind of trappy, slightly downward action, that doesn't necessarily help you out too much. But we should see slightly different numbers for me.
See a proper shot.
So I'll switch that over. So I've naturally always been a little bit of a higher flighted player, so I don't need a huge amount of loft. But as my action settled down, I've not necessarily needed that low spin ahead, but start TSR. A little bit drag left, or a lot drag left, a little bit drag left. Maybe a little bit out of the neck.
Yeah. Adler.
But what we can see for that different delivery, a little bit upward delivery, spin's a lot calmer.
Yeah.
Hitting slight pulls, but relative to any of the previous sort of 2 series sort of mid-spin heads, it's a much better spin number than I've seen in the past. And so I think noticeably it's that cross-face performance. The first one was definitely a little bit on the inside of the face, and they're just, for me, where I'm squaring the club face through, it's a slightly shallower delivery. There isn't that flare-up in spin.
No, you see that's controlled it really well, and predominantly the TSR 2 is something you just go to keep that spin a little bit higher for the player, but actually that's kept it down, well, below 2.5, which is something pretty impressive.
That's good. Let's see, straight comparison across. Not too bad there. Yeah. I think what is noticeable is you can just feel a little bit more give in the head. I mean, actually, kind of, it's a good swing, it's a nice shot, but you can definitely feel a little bit more torsion in the head. I just picked it up a little bit more.
Yeah. Just say I bring the spin down, but
a little bit more turned over. So, actual fact, this must be where my actions change a little bit. Both heads pretty strong on spin. I think the notable difference for me is just I can feel any slight miss hit on that. And so that one's drawn over, taking a bit of spin off. What neither of them actually are is they're not particularly high launching heads, which you might expect out of the TSI, the 2 series. Actually, with one of the fits I did earlier on this morning, it didn't launch up as much as I expected, but actually spin really stable. It was the maintenance of speed across the face. So I think what you're likely to find is a little less deviation off of it. I think, and that's really with most of the heads now. There's not, your ball speeds are, once you get up to efficiencies of 149, 150, there's not an awful lot to gain anymore. It's at its peak, but off centre, definitely from a feel point of view, really, really stable. Really solid. So it's the kind of thing I think from a consistency point of view we're going to do quite a lot of. Let's take it to the 3. I think with drivers, it's hard to make big gains on drivers now.
Yeah, I mean, you see that from, especially if someone's coming in with anything that's been sort of released in the last few years, probably even in the last 6 years. It's really hard when they say, I want to get more distance. You're almost looking, well, actually, it's more about can we gain that control. Sometimes you can get more distance, possibly they don't launch it right. You can get better distance in the carry, but definitely seeing in a lot less gains yardage-wise, but seeing a lot of drivers now, it's becoming more apparent that they're getting better across the face, which is giving people more confidence on that miss hit, and that makes a big difference, especially for me as well. If I stand there and feeling like actually if I'm hitting it a little bit all over the face and it's still popping out there straight and not losing too much, you feel like you can play the game with that. So
You're right. I think drivers in particular have been limited since 2003. So you're pretty much 20 years on without the middle of the face being allowed to get any hotter. So it's those off-center elements. But even then, it's not necessarily that much speed gain that we're going to see off-center. It's just less twisting at the head.
Yeah.
So a little bit more straightness.
right, let's give this a go.
So TSR3 being the kind of the middle one of the three heads, a little more compact.
No, I've still cut that out, but I actually felt just that little bit more solid through.
Yeah, well, what we can see from, yes, a little more down and across, so it's actually flared up, the spin's flared up because the face got a little bit more open. But launch angle stayed down a little bit more, which CG a little less far back. It's more like to keep that launch angle under control.
Just leaving that a bit open. Can I have one more? I know I can hit this well. Right. A little bit toe side, just going to turn it. Do one for you.
Well, one more, I think it's one of those where I don't know why I'm putting my glove on, we'll put the TSI3 on. I think the TSR3, again, definitely they've worked towards getting a little bit more stability across the face, a little bit more depth to the weighting last time. So if you want to screw this on, I'll take this to the camera at the back. So one of the things with this head, again, a little bit more, there's a bit more weight at the back. They've thinned out the face very slightly, thinned out the crown a little bit, as all the brands are doing. But kept that movable weight at the back, as is on the TSI3. The R really stands for refinement. It's not a wholesale massive change from TSI. It's a refinement on what they did before. So it's not going to be an earth-shattering change. However, one of the things that I think we're going to see across the board, and even more so when we move on to the next head, is how they maintain speed across the face. So a little bit of a different note there. Okay.
That's just to prove I actually can play this game.
So again, when you spin for you again, 3-2, still a little high.
Definitely popping up a tiny bit more.
Sounded pretty centered. Yeah, so centered it, maybe a hair toe, so I got the spin down a little bit more. Again, it's refinement. It's not massive differences head to head. I think anytime you get a little bit trappy, the slightly smaller head size, the slightly more forward CG is going to do a better job for you. And what we can see from that is, get the face square, it's always going to go a little bit longer.
It does help.
But again, it's slightly different notes as they change the materials, so slightly different feels from each of the different heads. I say ball speed hard to make any inroads really on drivers now. Other brands have made quite kind of big changes to some of the tech in their heads this year and have been thrilled with 1 mile an hour. I think what we're going to see here is, to repeat myself, it's that consistency of ball speed. And I think really no matter what the delivery line, I think that's what we're kind of starting to see from the shots we're hitting.
Yeah, you can see even attack angle down to attack angle up, how you club path across or into out, it's just all still staying nice and stable, nice consistent. Again, even that first head felt really solid, even with my club path.
See a little upward angle.
Yeah, good. And then the spin just naturally dropping a little bit lower. No, you slightly turned it, but
yeah, slightly. I think
small.
It's that little bit more solid feel than TSR2. Just say weight a little further forward. I mean, slightly neater head shape. For the traditionalists, it's going to be a look they're going to prefer. So a little lower on the face. Yeah, so spun up a little bit through being a bit lower in the face. But I think one of the things there that we can really see is it's still got a 148 efficiency.
Yeah.
So ball speed's not dropped off at all. Yes, it spun a little bit more, but actually for a shot low on the face, normally you'd expect to see quite a jump up in terms of speed and a reasonable drop off. Yeah. So for really not a great strike, that's actually maintained ball speed pretty well.
Yeah. Nice and stable. Middle of the fairway, you take that one bad strike, 272 all day long.
Hold the finish and pretend you meant it.
Yeah. Playing partners give you a little clap.
So it'd be interesting to see. I won't actively try and recreate that strike, but we'll see how the data changes going to TSI 3. So I think into say this head in particular, I think through the course of this last couple of years, TSI 2 has been particularly one of the most consistent performing heads. So TSR 2, other than a slightly different pitch of flight, maybe a little bit lower launching, I wouldn't necessarily expect there to be a vast difference. This will be a little more interesting to see how much differential in that stability we see. So that's one I've hit pretty well. Yeah,
but even that,
straight away there's the spin. So, that was really hit pretty solidly.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what we've seen is that TSI 3 is a very solid feeling, kind of controllable feeling head, but it's not that strong.
Yeah.
Oh, I've come under that. That's a horrible swing. But again, up goes the spin into the 3000s, whereas that was hit well and hit under a little bit. Actually, the previous one was a better strike, but the spin's noticeably up on TSR 3. So I think with what we're going to see with TSR 3, that's going to suit the stronger hitter a lot more. That's sort of coming into the realms of some of the the TaylorMades, the Cobras, the LS Callaways, which have been really pretty low spin.
Yeah, I think that's the thing of being able to deliver that sort of lower spin, keep that almost total distance out there, keep up with, like you say, the likes of TaylorMade and Callaway and Cobra have been out there all the time in the sort of long boys, just essentially, like you say, trying to gain that little bit extra in that total distance. I mean, it's not going to be massive change, but if you can keep that with the stability and that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, Titleist have never been renowned for long hitting drivers. They've never been the longest out there. They've generally gone for the consistency and the control side more. Yeah. But I think looking at where that spin is on the TSR 3, we're now starting to see a driver that at not that I'm high club speed, but at kind of stronger club speeds can start to really compete with the other brands for distance. And now this one's a particularly interesting one. TSI 4 was pretty miserably unforgiving. Yeah. And unless you're Adam Scott, really wasn't one that we really went anywhere near for most amateur golfers. Whereas that for Tom, little trappy, best ball speed, but it's a very different sound. TSR 4.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even go as far as saying old school, would you?
No, it's a weird. It's almost undescribable. It just feels different in terms of how it comes off. Obviously, that acoustics gives you a bit of a different feedback, but yeah, different feeling off the face altogether. Where the 3 and the 2 are similarly comparable, this just seems to change completely, and it's a different feel altogether. Still a nice stable feel, but definitely a different feeling.
And this is also, we've got this with the heavyweight forward, so this is in its lowest spin, least forgiving mode. I mean, that one for you is just pumped it out there, 2.5 on spin.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're still, 2.5 down, a little bit out to win. It's not like you've changed the delivery pattern.
No.
But where previously you'd look at the TSI 4 and go, oh, it should work for spin, but if you miss it, it's really not that friendly. It's actually a pretty solid head, this off-centre.
Yeah. Bit necky and down, but
just got over the top of it, yeah.
But even that is still, to be fair, that actual out the neck felt a bit closer to those 3 and the 2 in that feeling, because you're not hitting that sort of central part where it just feels a bit rocky. But looking at that first one, I mean, that's the sort of numbers for my...
Pull that one back up on the screen. But once you get, that was the thing there. Once you get that little bit downward, normally it's quite hard to get that spin. You're normally looking at your Stealth Pluses or something like potentially the Cobra to try and keep that spin down. But actually, the other bit with this head is it's going to appeal to someone who's likes the older, smaller club heads. The actual scale of the head. I'll see if I can get this without chucking everything on the floor. Relative to, take it to the TSR2. I've actually got, in terms of the general scaling of the head, how much that really shows, but it's noticeably a little bit more compact. It's a little bit deeper in the crown. You can see the kind of the rounding on the crown there. It's the heel to toe and front to back. It's generally a little bit of a smaller head, which visually is going to appeal to someone who's. There are a lot of players who don't necessarily like the big club heads.
No, and I think that's the thing of when you have someone especially comes in and just doesn't want to see a load of mass behind at the back end of the driver, it's really quite a nice one. And yeah, generally getting a lot of sort of fits where they are attacking it down with the driver because it's just that common sort of swing across. I think it just really helps having something where you can get that mass, keep the spin down, and all of a sudden it's still going to produce a good flight, even though not delivering it exactly how the modern day driver is.
And actually something that potentially doesn't feel like you've got to get it absolutely out the middle of the head as well. Let's see how this goes for me. Yeah, I mean it's such a solid feel of the head. That I think slightly lower on the face, but
fractionally, which is why. Up a little bit.
Hitting the previous model, I'd be going, oh God, that's horrible. But actually, I know it from the sound. It was a little bit different.
Yeah.
You don't feel the same twisting on the head. So if we can get that a little higher up the face. Oh, that's just wrap. That's a horror swing. yeah. I'll do one more.
But even that, with that horror swing, it still looks like. Once compared to the TSI4, it looks like it's actually going to try and get some sort of...
even with a 7-degree closed face, I mean, I think it's and I've got an M4, and I've hesitated to change because I don't want to change the ball flight, but I'm conscious that I'm losing a bit of forgiveness, and there's no way in the world previously I'd have thought about a TS4 model, but actually I'd consider. So it's got a little bit down that way again, spins down that little bit more, flights down a little bit more. It's something, from a feel point of view, it's incredibly solid. Which is going to appeal to quite a lot of, you might argue, high ball hitter, better ball strikers, lower handicap players who want that sort of compactness of head, but also want to feel some guts behind the contact. There's a lot of mass right on the back of the ball with that. And it doesn't feel hard to use.
No, that's the thing. It's making it feel like it's still a nice, easy driver to hit, but with all the performance of, like you say, something that's technically a really good player's driver. It just doesn't feel like you've got to be a tour player to hit it.
Yeah, I think so. What's quite interesting for your action, we can really see that flight. The two more of a mid-launch, mid-spin. 3 kind of still mid-ish spin, but the launch down a little bit. But the 4 for you just came out on a great trajectory. For me, a bit less of a difference on the spin. Launch angle difference a little bit, but where I'm a little bit more up and turn the toe in, the spin stays in a good window for each of them. Very different feel, but that little bit of a different flight. So I think what they've actually done, initially I wasn't sure whether it was a good thing or not, that the spin was so consistent across with the drivers. And potentially someone needing help launching it, I think at a moderate speed, that's somewhere I think will be interesting to see how that develops what we find with a kind of a 90, 95 mile an hour swing needing a bit of help launching. Although they do 11 degree in the TSR2. Yeah. Certainly at kind of the mid to upper end speeds, the spin's really stable across the range. But if you do get someone who traps it, there is somewhere to go without losing too much forgiveness.
Yeah,
so
which it's a great option across the range really now that you can attack it from all sides.
So drivers, obviously we're going to do a few more bits of this, and as we go down the line, we don't want to overdo things as a bit of an initial look at them, seeing they've only launched today. But I think one of the key things here is don't be scared of the TSR4.
Yeah.
It's not a scary club to hit from a feel point of view.
Yeah, definitely.
Like previous models have been. And then the 3 and the 2, it's maximum stability, and then just I say a bit of a middle ground. Obviously, it sits between the 4 and the 2, but I think it's interesting. I think as to it gives you options to where you want to go. You can fit into 2 or a 3 or a 3 or a 4. I would say for me, actually, you can look at the numbers and go, well, actually, I could technically play all 3 of them depending on what feel and base launch I wanted. Yeah. So
I can play 1. So.
And you can play the 4. Yeah. So let's move on to fairway woods. I think fairway woods we're going to see a little bit more difference. I think obviously we've had a little bit of a look at these earlier today, so we've got a base feel for where we're likely to go to. I think if we start for you with the 2. So the TSI 1 is retaining through. That's carrying on through. So that's not changing over at this point. So hence we're not looking at a 1 series for these.
Just bring that in close so you can have a look.
You can see on the 2, the weight's a little bit nearer the front than on, look at the TSI 2, the weight's at the back of the head. So weight's the back, that weight's a little bit further forward. So it's a similar kind of footprint to the head. But one of the factors, and we should see this as with a bit of the data, is that there's a little bit lower spin with the TSR series to the TSI and the fairway wood. Again, definitely going for a little bit more forgiveness with TSR2. So Tom, like with the driver, a little bit more sort of, a little bit down here, 3.5 angle of attack down. But where, and this I think we're going to see slightly bigger differentials. I mean, we're now not, but my gut feels we're going to see slightly bigger differentials in the comparison between the 2 models, or between the 2 series, i.e. TSR, TSI, than in the driver. So pretty similar ball speed. That one's just cut away, and that's actually a calculation on spin there. So do you want to just do one more with that, just together, because that's a faux spin. Again, ball speed very consistent between those 2. 151, 152.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels nice and solid behind it. Like there's plenty of, with that sort of weight, maybe just slightly further forward, just feels nice. Can get in the back of it, especially for me. Didn't quite get all of it, but again, just feels like it's going to sort of trap in.
Made sure that wasn't going to go high, right? But again, ball speed, 156 on ball speed, 147 efficiency. None of those are, by the way, actually missed the spin rate. None of those are actually flaring.
Yeah.
It's still quite a strong flight. So we'll see when we switch over to TSI. See how that changes. So TSI this last year or so in the 2 has been great for actually getting a bit of flight. Something that we've used with great success at actually maintaining a little bit of launch and spin. So compared to the TSR, which looks to come out on a fairly strong, sort of mid to strong ball flight.
Yeah, definitely feels like this is just almost gonna loft up a little bit and launch out a bit higher.
similar ball speed. But
can see.
for a well-hit shot, you're looking there at a spin rate of 4,000, whereas I'm going to just move it to the first shot with the TSR. Look at that same kind of 3.8 down, 10.5 launch, 3,000 spin, 0.2 degree more angle attack, face to path squared up, but the spin's up 1,000 revs.
Yeah.
So, which actually has been a great thing for this head this year. It's actually helped to get some trajectory where if someone tends to hit it out a bit flatter, but for you getting down on it, that's a monumental change in spin.
Try and keep that one down a bit low and
Got on top of it a little bit more, but still 3.8 on spin.
Yeah, and I mean,
so you're looking at a good 10 to 20% more spin between the two heads, which is the difference between one being really nice, efficient flight and one being 5-wood kind of performance. So, okay.
And that feeling with the weight being that little bit more back, just again felt like very nice and sort of stable across it, but definitely felt like you wanted to make the sort of ball launch up, get that head. Almost the feeling for me coming in a bit shallower to pop the ball up a bit more. So, really interesting that versus the.
I think this is particularly where, with your angle of attack being a little steeper than mine.
Yeah.
This is particularly where we're going to see. Let's make sure this clicks in. Yeah. I think this is where we likely see a slightly bigger differential for you potentially. He says in that spin profile. So again, TSR2 with my shaft in. I think one of the things it does well, because of the nice sort of flat sole shape, it seats really nicely.
Yeah.
You don't have to. It finds its place. It finds a nice sort of level position. It's like the pings have always done very well.
Yeah, you feel pretty confident you're going to get a good strike on it. It's not just feels deep or anything like some of the other models do.
So. Yeah, and so for me, so my Gamer 3-wood is the Epic Flash Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
So, i.e. quite a low spin head. So for me to get a sub 3,000 spin out of the 2 series head, that's really, that's quite a strong ball flight.
I was going to say, that's come off really well.
I don't know if I want to hit another one after that. But let's do. So maybe fractionally lower on the face.
Yeah,
a little lower on the face, so kick the spin up a little bit. But you would certainly expect that. But I think, like the driver, there's no feeling of twisting or. I know it from the sound, I know it from the. I used to get used to feeling that sort of lower on the face strike, but actually you're not feeling that head twisting around anywhere near as much.
No.
But ball speed maintenance, 147 efficiency.
Yeah, really, really good, and take that all day long in your efficiency of how you hit it, even with, if we jump back to that one again, pretty efficient across face, and like you say, just good numbers all round. And
then was there only a drop off of, was it 10 yards or so? Yeah, 10, 12 yards.
Yeah, about 12, 13 yards in there. So, like you say, that's just slight bottom hit, a bit more spin, just losing that total, but really, really good.
So TSI, a little more rounded on the sole, and actually I can find myself with the TSR, put the club down, it just literally levels itself off. This one you can see it just rocking around a little bit more. So that's definitely an improvement, I think. So plenty of launch. Be interesting to see where spin. Yes, a very similar shot to the first one I hit with the TSR2, and that's 500 revs, best part of 450 revs higher spin. So I guess backs up what we've used this head really well for this last year or so, a couple of years, is exactly that. Is get a little bit of launch, get a little bit of spin.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound quite as fast off the face.
No, it doesn't. Again, I just wonder if that's that sort of weighting, just
a little bit. Not my finest shot. Little closed, little necky, but that launches up. So that one again just rolled over, which is my general bad shot.
Still wants to creep up that little bit more, even with rolling it over. I know you caught it a little bit out of the hill, but it's definitely flighting more upwards in the TSI. And like you say, great for people that couldn't almost get their launch angle up, and it's still a lovely fairway wood, and it was really helpful over the last sort of 18 months of helping people get a flight with a good 3-wood and 5-wood. But yeah, just now with that new TSR2, it just seems to come out, maybe control that spin a little bit better and just launch it. But it'll be interesting to see loft-wise where we have to go moving forward, where we have to go more up to that 16.5 degree to get the 3-wood sort of ball flight.
I was going to say, that was exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking we're going to do, I think TSR2 is going to be a very strong fairway wood head, not just for flight in terms of performance, overall kind of performance, but I think the 16.5 head's going to be one we're going to do an awful lot of, just purely because it doesn't come out that high. It's not a high launching head. So in order to get a little bit more flight, I think the 16.5 head is going to be one we're going to do a few more of than we have done this year. So on to TSR3. We'll do a bit of a summary on each one. We'll go back over each head once we've hit these and got the data, and then we can
show you that one in there. So again, you'll see weighting a bit more similar. So if we pick it up. So you'll actually see pretty similar in terms of what you're seeing on the bottom. So weight move further forward, obviously try and get that launch down a little bit more, and hopefully being what we've seen earlier, this will...
So also got the ability with this one, like with the driver, to move it heel and toe. You move that CG a little more on the toe, a little more on the heel, just to help with a bit of shot bus or strike location as well. So as far as heads go, from a, again, angle attack point of view, slightly heely?
A little bit, yeah. Just slightly.
This is the kind of head that, in theory, would suit. A little bit of a deeper profile than the TSR2 and TSI2, way a little further forward, but going to bring that launch angle down a little bit versus TSR2. Oh, that's just smoked. Yeah. So, yes, it's not a high launching head, but when you're 4.5 degrees down on a fairway like Thomas, it's if it launches high, it's going to spin. But what we can see with that, I mean, it's almost too strong.
Yeah.
But at 3.2, 3.3 on spin, it's actually not a bad spin rate. It's more that it's coming out flat at 8.5 degree launch, and then therefore chasing out. So you might look to get the spin 3.5, 3.6 just to rein the run out distance back a little bit. But just a really strong number. So, I mean, kind of really designed for that kind of delivery.
Yeah.
I think, from a feel point of view.
Yeah, just, again, really solid. Like, I would probably say not almost like that sort of really firm feeling of the drive, like the TSR4 driver, but just really feels like there's something behind it. It doesn't feel anything other than it's going to really sort of launch you forward. And again, sits lovely to the ground. It just, you stand there over it thinking, okay, I can really sort of crunch into this. And for me, having that feeling of actually I can get into that and really, in essence, squeeze it out, but not squeeze it up.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference. And yeah, I mean, well, if I can hit it that far, I'll take it all day long. So,
but I think this is where, before the TS series came around, and that was the TS were a bit of a jump forward, TSI was another jump forward. Previous to that, if you wanted to play a Titleist club, you just, in the woods, you generally had to play it knowing it was going to spin a bit more because it was a bit more controllable. It was never a long, you were always giving up a little bit of distance.
Yeah.
I think now, in particular, I mean, the last series was a major leap forward in that respect. But now, these ones, I think, with the drive of the 4 opening up and kind of making a really pretty low spin, pretty solid feeling head playable, that now brings them into the conversation a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. It's up there with some of the best fairway woods, no doubt. Tiny bit out of the bottom, that one.
So similar launch, not quite as much speed. So if it's a bit low, interesting to see with one more where that spin goes to, but it does look to be about 300 revs higher spin. made sure that didn't come out. So popped it up a little bit more, but I think it's that launch angle consistency.
Yeah.
I think for you,
Yeah.
with that downward angle of attack, I think that's where, when you get on top of it, it's not quite the TSR3 is a little bit more feels a bit more exaggerated.
Yeah.
In terms of that weight positioning.
Yeah, and it's a weird. I think it's one of those until you've tried it, you don't really know that feeling. But just off the face slightly, the TSI for it just doesn't feel like it's got that complete right. I'm gonna really smash through this. It just almost again a bit more gives you that bit of control. You feel like, oh, okay, this is gonna be nice and consistent and find the sort of middle of the fairway a lot more, but just didn't feel like it was going to really come off as hot as that TSR. So be interested to see what you think.
Yeah, and I think you say part of it is that sound. It's a bit of a different note.
Yeah.
But I think I can hear it stood behind you, and it's one that may not come across on the film as much. The note change as much, but I think it just doesn't look like it's doing anything coming out forwards. I think for me the TSI with your action's a little bit less consistent on that initial launch angle. Based on where the TSR2 is and spin, for me, this will be quite interesting to see actually how low does this come out.
Yeah.
Okay, it was a little open-faced. Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
again,
and that wasn't a strong. It didn't feel like a strong flighted shot. It felt like I got a little bit open, but that's still sub 3,000. Okay, let's see if I can get that face squared up. Maybe fractionally lower on the face.
yeah. But
So.
again, maintain the spin really well, even though it's fractured.
Yeah, a little bit low. Yeah, so the spin hasn't flared in the slightest. So you've got the face squared up better there, a bit more draw bust, but that launch angle down, that's a real driller flight out. This one, if you really want to knock it down, let's have a little play with that. If I really want to flight this low, this feels like I could knock it down about 3 degrees. It's, just to bring that flight down. Rolly draw, but yeah, you can see where that spin's gone. So it's an interesting. I think if you're not overly steep into it, it's the kind of head that actually could end up coming out a little bit knuckly.
Yeah.
And so we're having a little bit of a look at this earlier just to get a kind of a bit of data, a bit of a citer on it before we did the video. And similar kind of consensus. I think if your gut feel is if you're a little shallower through, TSR2 is a great head and really consistent on spin and still gives a strong flight. But if you get a little bit steeper onto it, TSR3 just stops that spin from going anywhere other than forwards.
I think that's going to be the big thing for players like that, is it's just knowing full well that even if you don't quite get it right, you're not going to get punished and lose a lot off of it by it just flaring up. It just feels like it's always going to carry on.
That was a pretty centered hit. That's about as well as I've hit one. That's interesting. Let me do one more, because that looks a slightly low spin. Let's do one more there. Again, there's a bit more launch to it. Yeah, so similarly, I'm now getting pretty low spin out of TSI3. There's a little bit more launch out of that one. So that's actually surprised me how low I'm spinning that, because historically I've always spun that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But in terms of flight-wise, you can see a little bit more launch out of it. TSR3 definitely pulls that flight down.
Yeah.
So it's much more of a kind of a bullet flight, whereas this is launched and come out low. The other one just launches low and comes out low for me. And actually would almost make me a little bit nervous with where those spin rates are, and that's just losing me a bit of carry.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Obviously, like you say, you're losing that carry, so you're not getting that efficiency out, and also it starts to then, well, especially with the way conditions have been, all of a sudden you're getting that forward momentum, and it's dragging too close to your driver. So, yeah, interesting to see that and the difference. But
yeah, I think what it does show is that for me being a little bit shallower into the ball and a little bit more kind of closed face release, the spin differentials model to model and series to series aren't vast. There's a bit more of a launch angle variation between them though. But for you, where you get a law on top of it, it's a real definite.
Yeah.
I mean, the 3 and the 4 in particular are just a definite improvement.
Yeah, massive.
Really definite improvement. Whereas, yeah, I probably see, it's more of a flight window for me, rather than a massive difference in the spin profile, and then just a bit more margin off centre.
Yeah.
So if we were kind of go back through, I think a bit of a summary on what each model, kind of player each model is going to suit. Back through driver, obviously TSR 4, which is still on that shaft from earlier. Actually, something not to be scared of.
No, definitely.
It's historically a head that, I can't think of many people in the last couple of years I've even ventured anywhere near TSI 4.
No, well, I remember back, it was one of those things of almost getting hold of one was not really necessary because it was just so hard to get anything out of. It was like, oh, why would you want to use it? But now I'd be really encouraged to actually put that in the bag and feel like I'm going to get quite good results from it.
And this is in the less forgiving setting. You can put the heavier weight at the back, which almost turns it into a TSR 3.5.
Yeah.
Where you're going to gain a little bit more forgiveness, but keep the smaller head style. And there are a lot more people I can see me putting that into the mix with from a fitting point of view. And that solidity of feel, I think a lot of players almost kind of say they just struggle to feel the ball, the shots now with the current heads. They're all big and clunky, or they just don't like the way it sits behind the ball. But actually, that's a proper option for them.
Yeah, definitely.
Then I guess we're going to compare between TSR 3, TSR 2. I still think action dependent, if you're a little squeezy, more differential than I saw, just a little bit of a flight window difference. Would you say just generally a bit of a progression on forgiveness versus TSI?
Yeah, I think it just felt a little bit more balanced, really. Like I said, small gains here, but just across the face, it felt like it had that touch more stability. And again, it's all about that confidence factor of when you stand there, you just feel like a little bit more, okay, if I don't quite catch this, it's just going to keep me in play, maybe another fairway hit.
Yeah, I think so. 2 was always very good for that, but I think the 3 now has that element of feeling like you can hit it most places on the face and get away with it. I think whether it's a design element or not, maybe could they have gone slightly more different on spin? Possibly, but now you've got the 4. Do you really need the spin killer of the TSR 3?
Yeah.
Probably not with that one. But again, something where you've got an element where you can go for maximum stability or a little bit more feel, a little more compactness. But I just sound overall heads. I think it's one of those ones where the only reason I sort of hesitate, not from a negative point of view, but they're very stable. But is there anything that feels stand out with them? Not necessarily, but both really good heads.
Yeah, I think just almost brought a little bit closer together, and again, probably just gives you, from a fitting perspective, something that you can actually you can dive a little bit this way or that way in terms of they're not so different in what they do now. With the right attack angle, how you present the club can really sort of light it up and just switch between heads and see where you get the most out of.
You've still got TSI 1 if you want something with a little more spin, a little lighter weight, a little more flight, then you've got that one to go to as well.
Yeah, we can get the ball up there still. It's just, a few more options now of keeping it down or bring that launch down as well.
And then into the fairways. I think this is where, certainly from TSR2, certainly from a distance point of view, you've got a head that really goes. I mean, they have got the 2 plus the 13 degree, which is basically designed as pretty much just a teeing off club, and it's a real design meant to be a real rocket. And based on, for me, what I saw with that, I mean, it's almost going to be driver strength on spin. I think that there's the biggest gain versus TSI in shot strength. As long as the extra loft for the flighting works, it doesn't take too much spin off. I think that's probably the only thing I would say is that, again, you got TSI 1 still for a little more flight. For those that need a little bit of flight and spin, has that just knocked it down a hair more than as fitters as maybe we would like to see?
Yeah, I think it's
possibly.
could be a little bit of just stretched it away from what was so good about the TSR2 of helping out it. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially seeing guys hitting the 16.5 and how it sort of plays. So we could find that we actually end up a bit more, like you say, back into TSR1 for certain players, and really those guys that are looking to keep the flight down a little bit more, or that sort of stronger flight for tee, they've got those two options. And
but that also brings it into the realms of more forgiving and stronger, which from a general point of view, more people are more interested in hitting their clubs a bit further. So you could, it's a bit of give and take, really, isn't it? I guess for one style of golfer, maybe a little less suitable, but actually probably a lot of golfers, the lower spin helps to keep that flight forward and get a bit more yardage.
Yeah, and that's predominantly when you get a lot of guys who want something they can trust if the driver's not quite working, or someone they have that, and like, oh, actually the 3-wood does get out there now, they're happy because it's like they've got two options on the day.
And potentially flight a little lower, but very stable across the face. So, you know, there are more wins than losses in this, put it that way for sure. And TSR3, I think, and that puts it in the realms of Stealth Plus, the LS Ping, the LS Callaway, possibly even stronger than those last two. I mean, that's a pretty strong head.
Yeah, it's quite impressive to jump into that realm, sort of, and just the way they've done it as well, of not sort of giving up a feeling of, oh, it's not forgiving at all, just to try and get that extra distance. It feels so stable as you hit it, and it, like I say, it just feels really, really strong behind the hit. Something I think quite a few players are going to enjoy, especially if there's people who like to tee off with a 3-wood. It's going to give them something quite special.
Got a bit of depth. I think it's still a very, very Titleist feel. It's still a very solid, very. It's got that traditional look. It's a very clean shape. I mean, again, we'd probably like to do some more 16.5 degree lofts in it because of where that flight comes out. However, I think there are a lot of people who've wanted to hit a Titleist fairway in the past and just not quite had the spin in the flight where they wanted to, where that's really going to fill that void and certainly keep up with the stronger heads that we've seen this year. So good overall gain there. They've each got, you know, they've retained the weight option, so we've got a pack that we can fit with you know, plus minus weights in both models. So that's retained through, which gives a good bit of versatility on lengths, you know, with its lengths and balances and swing weights. And one thing that we'll say, because of the nature of the video we're doing today, we've got a live tomorrow lunchtime, that any questions that anyone thinks up on these, anything you want to ask at all, join us tomorrow at 12 o'clock and we'll be able to answer as many of those as we can. But I think it's worth saying, I think Titleist it's obvious the direction they've taken with this launch. They've definitely gone around a bit more of a distance orientation. They definitely, you know, I think there are a lot of higher speed players that are going to really enjoy playing this, but still the stability for kind of more mid-speed players as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be great for, like you say, the guys who want that bit more speed that they didn't see it before. But yeah, still a good all-round club and still a great fairway wood to hit, really, that Titleist always have been, and they're continuing on with that.
And to have the products that cover different deliveries of club, I think that's one of the things that we've often lamented, is that haven't got a club that will work for this. One brand's good at one thing, another brand's good at another thing. Actually, I think particularly I was going to say particularly the fairways, but actually in the drivers now with the 4, you've got something pretty much for most players there, which have really kind of, it's not something you see that often.
No.
So I think as a range overall, very strong.
Yeah, definitely.
So is there any questions at all? Anything real on the new Titleist range, how it compares to the previous model, kind of players it's suited to? We're going to be, as we fit with these more and more, we're going to be just seeing a few of the nuances and knowing kind of quite how each club head performs, depending on swing style and player style. But any questions at all, just let us know. We'll try and answer any that come in prior to the live tomorrow. Within that, we'll see if we can incorporate that in. Equally speaking, log on, watch the live, and ask us in person, and we'll answer the best we can. But thank you for watching, and come and check the TSRs.
Remember to subscribe to the channel.